Hello everyone and welcome back to GodSaw's Turnbuckle, and today I am going to be doing a review, and I will be doing a review for WWE Unreal Season 2. I did go ahead and watch it today as it had come out on January 20th, and honestly, as a whole, I did actually quite enjoy the season, but then again, I'm typically a fan of particular things that take you more into the backstage side of everything, and kind of seeing how they put together stuff and also how they come about towards particular storylines that they're going into, and also to see what are they willing to be a little bit more transparent about. You with WWE stuff, you typically have to assume that not they're not going to be 100% transparent about everything in general. We'll kind of get into that into some in some of these particular episodes. Again, it was much like last season. It was a 5 episode season, and each episode kind of focused around one, two, maybe three things without throughout the entire time, for it as well. There were some interesting aspects to everything. We'll talk about the Seth Rollins injury angle in this one, but also stuff that they did with Naomi, everything that they had with R-Truth as well. And they do have a lot of focus, especially around a couple episodes, around Becky Lynch and Lyra Valkyria and their storyline to go along with that throughout the entire season, to go along with it, with their feud leading into SummerSlam. So there were honestly a decent amount of things that they ended up talking about in this one. I'll kind of start with the first episode, where I would say a good chunk of this, it did focus a little bit back into WrestleMania 41 with Becky Lynch's return. They do kind of start off with Seth Rollins as well, and they kind of explain the relationship between Seth and Becky, and everybody's kind of known about that on TV for quite some time, as well, but also the aspect of just her return in general, which I found it interesting in the first episode of the season. They didn't mention much about her replacing Bayley at the WrestleMania 41 match. They do kind of go into that a little bit more later on when they start talking more about evolution and everything in that sense. They do bring everything back up when it comes to the triple threat match between Bayley, Lyra, and Becky at Evolution, which they do talk a little bit more about. Again, this was more or less within, I believe, episode 4 of that, because they kind of go into more of the aspects of everything with Seth Rollins in that one as well, and they bring up everything in Evolution, or like him being at Evolution to watch Becky, everything in that sense, and him kind of playing his particular role and trying to keep kayfabe with everything. Again, I'll kind of get into that a little bit more here a little bit later, but I did want to kind of make mention to that because I did kind of want to skip around to that because it felt a little bit weird initially. It's like, oh, they're not making mention to anything about, oh, we're replacing Bayley with Becky and this and that. It was like Becky just shows up, but they do kind of go more into that when they start going into Evolution a little bit more later in the season. So they do kind of go backwards to that as well, with that. Also, the other main focus of the episode was the Pat McAfee stuff with his match with Gunther going into Backlash. Everything that they did with that, setting up the ring, him training, even Gunther talking things over with like Triple H on how everything is gonna go and this and that. Like, is he gonna give him respect at the end? Everything to go along with that, and those were nice little touches to go along with it. And I did end out quite enjoying that storyline that they told in there. It kind of was something that they make mention to a little bit more when you have the Jelly Roll stuff in and more in episode 5 when they start talking about him doing his SummerSlam match, everything in that sense as well. We'll kind of get a little bit more into that a little bit later on. But that was pretty much the gist of episode 1 for everything. I do for purposes of everything here, this is kind of more just reviewing everything. I do recommend people going back and watching it if they do have Netflix. And honestly, I may mention at the beginning, I did actually quite enjoy this season. So I thought it was intriguing. But that's me personally for that one. Now, episode 2 does start off with R-Truth, actually. So it does start off with R-Truth talking about everything with the quote unquote release, which later ended up finding out was more just his contract was not being renewed. It had been coming up in there. They even kind of make mention to that in there. Is like this was more of a non-renewal, not necessarily a full-on release. Typically what they've been making mention to of and like one thing we've kind of noticed since WWE has kind of put out there that they're doing maybe not renewing somebody's contract or something like that, they typically are staying on the payroll until the contract is up, but they may be taken off TV early, so they won't necessarily do anything with them, but hey, your contract's up on this date, that's when this ends, blah blah, all that type of stuff. They even make mention to that in here that based off of how his contract was put in there, when he got his new contract, technically he was never off the payroll. They make mention to that, but they also really go into there about how disappointed like everyone was backstage because it was R-Truth. Everybody loved R-Truth. They did this. It was like he did this for them. It was like everybody just kind of shining up R-Truth, like giving him his flowers to its own degree with that as well. Road Dogg even is a big focus of this because they kind of tell the story of how Road Dogg brought R-Truth into the company back in 2000, but also making mention to like how R-Truth is like one of his best friends and kind of helps him out with the factors of what his demons were in the past as well. So they tell these type of stories within there, and it kind of just lets you know the relationship between R-Truth and Road Dogg inside of there as well. And like they showed pretty much all of the Twitter posts, everything in that sense. They had tons of superstars on there, or they had tons of the wrestlers like Rhea Ripley, and a lot of them just having talking points of R-Truth throughout the episode. They also did one thing that they do with these is that they kind of go into the writers' room or into the creative room within WWE. They make mention like before R-Truth does his haircutting bit at the when after he returns at Money in the Bank. He makes mention that he wanted to cut his hair beforehand, and everyone was kind of questioning, like, why are we doing this as well? And obviously he gets the okay to do it after Money in the Bank. It's like, hey, we try a different direction, everything in that sense, and we're trying a different direction. It's like it's okay to cut my hair, and he's like, and they give him the okay to do it. And it's like okay, yeah, we'll do it then. At that point in time, and typically they do. Typically they do have to pass things over on that because it's a character, and you want to kind of keep things consistent. You don't want like one week it's like they have this, and then the very next week it's like completely different look for no reason type stuff. Which is actually one of the reasons why, like, when someone is getting their haircut, they do something on camera. At least from what I've always taken from everything, is like they always do something on camera to get rid of the hair, or they have a hair versus hair match, or or they or one person has to get their head shaved if they lose a match or something like that to set up the next look for everything. And then R-Truth at the end of the episode, when they make mention to him shaving his head and everything, it was actually, he throws a funny bit in there. It's like uh, the last line of the episode is like, "Oh, and I'm going bald." He was like, "I'm going bald anyway," and then they kind of just cut. And so it was kind of a little funny bit that they put in the end of the of episode two. But that wasn't the only focus on episode two as well. They do focus a lot on Naomi. In setting up her heel turn with everything. They actually do make mention to the walkout in which they did do in the trailers. They did make mention to the walkout and talking about that particular walkout with her and Sasha Banks back in 2022. They even do make mention to Sasha Banks inside the episode as well to go along with it. Now, they don't, obviously, since, you know, she's in AEW, everything in that sense, she doesn't actually do any talking points. They do show footage of Sasha Banks within the episode itself. So it's not like this, oh my God, surprising type thing with that. They do also make mention to they do make mention to the reason why they ended out doing the walkout. It was due to frustration, and it was actually out there anyway. It was like due to frustrations with creative, and it was based upon the final straw was kind of based upon them being put together against each other in a match, and it was something that they didn't feel was right for the characters at the time, and they kind of stood their ground on it. So that was kind of put in there as well. Now, the one surprising thing on this, I find this to be a little bit more surprising. When they talk about the walkout back in 2022, the person who just makes mention to it, I forget his name off the top of my head. It was one of like kind of the agents backstage or something in that, or somebody from like more the corporate office or something in that sense. He makes mention to, it's like, this happened under a different head of creative and a different talent relations person. No mention of Vince, no mention of Laurinaitis within any of this. That was probably the more shocking thing on that, was the fact that they don't, it's not the aspect that they mentioned Sasha Banks in there. It's the fact that it's like, no, this was under a completely different regime. You don't have to worry about their names in any way, shape, or form type thing. Though they do show, I think in episode 4 and also in episode 5 as well, they do have Vince's voice in there doing the call of Bret Hart versus the British Bulldog in '92 in Wembley. And then they do also show the aspect of Vince's limousine getting blown up. And that was, I'll make mention of that because that was in episode 4. And it was with Paul Heyman making mentions to the importance of a work. Again, we'll talk about that in a brief moment. The other things about Naomi inside of there, it was like, it was setting up her heel turn, everything in that sense of her return from the Royal Rumble in 2024 up until her heel turn and the way that they were going to get around that. A lot, and there was even like reservations from some of the people in creative. It's like, Naomi's always been a like the baby, like a baby face character, everything like that. And like, backstage, she's like always nice and everything. They don't think that she's going to run with it too well, and then she knocks it out of the ballpark. Which we all know the Naomi character before, or at least for me personally, like the Naomi character before she left for her pregnancy was knocking it out of the ballpark. She was doing great as a heel, great promos, good matches, good stories, and they, like, they basically give her props on being a very good heel. The other aspect of this is that they make no mention to her TNA run. I figure they might make mention to something like that just due to the fact that she had because the WWE and TNA have a partnership, so they might have made mention to that. Maybe they could have got the footage for it or something. I don't necessarily know, but they don't make mention to that at all. It's pretty much she left, she returned, and now heel run. And that was pretty much the gist of episode 2 for everything. So that was honestly, it was a again, I thought it was a pretty intriguing episode. I did kind of like the aspect of them going into the stuff with R-Truth, his return at Money in the Bank, and then everything to go along with Naomi as well. So yeah, that was pretty much the gist of episode 2. Now, going into episode 3, they do focus a little bit more again on Seth Rollins and aspects of the Vision, but you also get a lot of you actually get a lot of focus between 2 other characters as well, being Penta, and the other being Chelsea Green. Uh, for everything to go along with that. Penta basically kind of makes mention to history of Lucha Libre, everything in that sense. People don't necessarily know their name, and that's kind of been one of the things that was mentioned in the typically a lot within there is that they will give their real name before they give like basically all the other wrestling names that they go under for everything on that one. Penta doesn't do that. He kind of goes over his other wrestling names because he kind of holds to the history of Lucha Libre, that if you're under the mask, people don't know who you are. They don't know your name. They don't know this. And I actually do appreciate that. And they do go through a lot of everything within, um, you know, his school, his like relationship with his daughter, his daughter showing up for the events and everything in that sense. Also the factors of his school that he has down in Mexico as well, where he's teaching people wrestling, or the lucha style, and actually a really good little backstory for Penta with everything. And during that time frame, they actually kind of set up everything as well, going into the Chelsea Green stuff. And they actually do show, and this is actually kind of good because they go through the history between Penta and Chelsea Green, and they actually use Lucha Underground footage as well. They get the Lucha Underground footage from their match, and Chelsea Green kind of talks about it, and that she even makes mentions like people say you should run it back. It's like, nope, that was perfect as it was, and we'll never do it again, type thing. Chelsea Green, they do kind of follow more about her out of the ring, out of the arena life, and they do go through Saturday night's main event as well with her match with Zelina Vega and how she gets her gets a broken nose during that particular match. You get little backstage segments, you get little backstage spots where like Zelina finds out that she broke her nose and is like immediately apologetic about it. They don't go into the aspect of the match details too much with that one. They do kind of go away through. They kind of get around the fact that that was like a shorter match. They do mention it's like, oh, it's going to probably be one of the shorter matches on the show, just due to timing and everything on that. But they don't. I think a lot of people ended up making that being one of the worst matches of last year. They don't really go into that one, that portion of it too much. Though they do kind of talk about matches going wrong a couple of different times throughout this time frame. they do make mention to how everything was going with Money in the Bank, with that, with aspects of that as well. I don't think that goes into this particular episode. I think that kind of goes more um, into episode four with everything, because that was one of the longer episodes. Episode four and episode five were the longer episodes. Each of them were like over, just over an hour at that point. Otherwise, they were usually around 55 minutes to like 40 something minutes for each episode. Um, to go along with it. But the other focus that they really do go on here, and yes, they actually do kind of make mention to. They do actually make mention to it in this particular episode. I'm just kind of re-looking at my notes because they do go over the Money in the Bank matches as well. And actually, I did miss this as well. During episode two, they do go through the women's Money in the Bank match. Again, that was more of the of everything with the setup with Naomi's heel turn and what it led to getting her to Money in the Bank as well. They do make mention to the men's Money in the Bank in this match because they do focus on Seth and doing the Vision and everything in that sense. They kind of go through the aspects, and they do this for both Money in the Bank ladder matches, like just going through the process of setting up how these matches go. They even set up a finish in this one to where apparently things were going to be a little bit different with how the final interaction between LA Knight and Seth Rollins was at the end of that match, where apparently it was supposed to be a spot where um, they were going to tease LA Knight getting the briefcase, which is what they technically did, but it was done differently. The way it came off on the show, Seth is getting close to the briefcase, and LA Knight pulls him off, and then takes him out, then starts climbing, and then Seth Rollins does the reverse of that, and then hits the stomp and everything to go along with that. The way they actually laid it out within the show when they were talking about things in the arena, and then later on as well, it was supposed to be where both LA Knight and Seth Rollins were fighting on the top of the ladder. He knocks off Seth to kind of tease that he's going to be able to do get the briefcase. And as he was about to get the briefcase, that is when Seth Rollins would pull him down, kick him, stomp, and get the victory. So things didn't necessarily go according to plan, because I guess the way that they saw it, like if LA Knight was up there and knocks him off, it would get a bigger reaction than what they were going for before. And you have kind of a bit, I won't say a bit in there, but you have a point where Triple H is talking to LA Knight, and he was making mention to everything on that one, and you just get this insane face like of just pure utter disappointment from LA Knight with it as well. It's kind of been going around on social media and everything. It's like you could just tell he was just disappointed with either himself or just how the match ended in general with everything. So that was pretty much the focus of episode three with those three particular things. Now, episode four and five do kind of focus primarily through. They do have three focuses really with everything within there, but the primary focus over the last two episodes is with the Seth Rollins injury angle and leading into SummerSlam itself. You do also get a pretty good focus on this particular episode. Jelly Roll training for his match at SummerSlam as well, talking about how he was going to he was aiming to be under 300 pounds, everything in that sense, and just putting the effort in to get ready for the match itself. And then the other big focus on this one, outside of the injury angle, was basically the setup for Evolution to go along with it. They do a lot of talking with Io Sky, Naomi, Rhea Ripley. You get a focus within there as well for the triple threat match with Bayley, Lyra Valkyria, and Becky Lynch. And it was just it ended up being a really good episode with that one. They went through the entire setup of like them coming up with the spots for EO and for Rhea Ripley, and like talking over like the big outside of the ring spots inside there, and then also setting up everything for Naomi's eventual cash in as well, even to the point that where they were showing is like she has to be with doctors before, like 30 minutes before she's supposed to go back out there, because she busted her nose during the match with Jade Cargill as well on that same show. Honestly, this was a very good episode with everything, because like they were showing like how everyone was celebrating for Naomi and everything after the cash in. They talk about they do a lot of talking about like the aspects of the triple threat match. Everybody was just like blown away by it as well on that show. And yeah, they did do kind of a lot of praising of the matches. Let's be real, if you watched Evolution, those were the two best matches on the show, and they were fantastic matches, like way up there on being like beyond great matches for that particular show itself. But obviously another portion of this is they were going over Saturday night's main event again, and this is the aspect of where they get to the Seth Rollins injury angle. You do get the whole aspect of Paul Heyman. This is where he kind of makes mention, is like, and this is the point where I say I don't really like this show. They show this in the trailer for the season, and this is where they go through everything. For that as well, like setting up, like they go back into the meeting room and they set up the actual, they had talked about this beforehand, before even really getting into Seth Rollins and everything to go along with that as well. Now they do actually go into who knew everything, like who knew what was going on. Like they showed Triple H talking to Paul Heyman. They are not talking to Paul Heyman, but talking to Cody Rhodes, talking to, and then he makes mention like completely who knew, because obviously Seth Rollins knows. Paul Heyman knew because he was in the meeting room when it was being discussed. So you had the people from creative that knew. So like people like Bruce and things like that knew what was going on. He makes mention it's like Bobby Roode knew because he was going to kind of be the producer of the match itself. So he knew ahead of time. And they make mention, and rightfully so on these next two. One, they do make mention to medical. Like they let the medical team know, because obviously if they think it's a real injury, they're going to just put like everything to rest, and they can't fully go through the angle. And then they also let LA Knight know, which Triple H put it out there as like, I have to let LA Knight know because the last person he wants to think that this is real is LA Knight, because he's the opponent in the match. He's the person out there. He's supposed to keep Seth Rollins basically show that he's trying to beat him up, but also protect him in the end. So he didn't want him thinking that it was the actual, like it was an actual injury that happened within his match. Um, and they actually do make mention to the fact that Seth Rollins is like, he wasn't 100% certain that LA Knight needed to know. And then Triple H kind of threw to him, was like, man, if I did this to you, you would have been furious when you found out that it wasn't, that it was just a work for everything. Paul Heyman goes, one of the other things that Paul Heyman goes over is that the importance of a work, and he retells the story of the Sandman, Tommy Dreamer angle, where he was blinded. He didn't go anywhere for 5 weeks. They brought him in for a retirement, and they make the big reveal, and it's this big moment. And that was the whole aspect of their particular story over the next 2 episodes. And the reason why, and I do feel like I'll go probably fully into this now, because let's be fully 100% real on this one. They obviously they play it off in this one as if they fooled everyone, as if the news didn't fully get out there. Everything on that side, which isn't completely true. On that one, though, I did kind of go back through like predictions episodes and everything like that to kind of remind me like where the realm that I listen into, like Sean Ross Sapp, Steven Larson, Cultaholic, Wrestle Talk, Dave Meltzer. And we'll make mention to Dave Meltzer on this one because Dave Meltzer was the first one to report, probably about a day or so after the injury angle happened, that it was a work, that he was told it was a work and they're setting up something for SummerSlam with this. And but they did kind of have it set up, and if you do listen back to some of the people mentioning everything before, and like this was what like when Sean Ross Sapp was doing a predictions episode with Denise Salcedo, he was leaning more towards work, but didn't have proper information to say that it was a work. But he was leaning that it was more towards a work on his own personal opinion, but he didn't necessarily report anything like that because he didn't have the information that he needed. And Denise was kind of the same on that as well. Like Steve and Larson were kind of on that spot as well, where they weren't 100% behind it, behind the fact that it was there, and even their predictions don't even include Seth Rollins on their night one predictions. Now, Wrestle Talk, on the other hand, was a little bit different with that one. Both Luke Owens and Ollie Davis were fully on the aspect that it was a complete work. And their predictions for the show, one for Luke, he actually went back and he had called it to either be a triple threat match or Seth Rollins cashes in on like CM Punk or something like that. Ollie Davis went the completely different route of saying he wasn't going to cash in on night one, he was going to cash in on night two against Cena or Cody or something like that and go for the WWE title. Cultaholic side, like Sam didn't didn't even really make mention to it. I forget the other person who typically does the actual predictions with them. He was predicting that Seth Rollins would cash in within that match and make it like a triple threat, but he was also kind of where he's like, he might actually have a real injury, so he wasn't necessarily 100% in the know on that one. But to be fully real, that news did get out about a day or two afterwards. And even my predictions, I did not necessarily go with Seth Rollins as well. Like I kind of thought like they were going to play off that he wouldn't even be there in any way, shape, or form. I was kind of playing off that it might have been a full-on real injury. I had read the reports. I had read that report from Dave Meltzer that it was going to be a work and this is what they were going to do. He ends up being completely correct in this particular case as well. Now, am I okay with the fact that WWE kind of plays it up, that they kind of worked everybody? Yeah, I'm okay with it. Here's why I'm okay with it. Um, the reason why I'm okay with it is even though even though it's them kind of playing up that aspect of the work, which Seth does completely to a T, like he's on crutches all the time, everything in this sense, um, up until like the final moments before he's supposed to go out on curtain. I think they drive him. That's one of the few times he's not on crutches. I even like the fact that Paul Heyman makes mention is like the one way that this ends is just someone taking one picture and putting it out on the internet. So they kept kind of all that stuff secretive. They really did. To its own degree. Now, somebody probably overheard what was being talked about because it was kind of being talked about a little bit in the open, everything in that sense. Like Cody was in the arena when Triple H was telling them. Somebody could have overheard that and they got that to Dave Meltzer. I don't necessarily know. But the reason why I'm saying I'm okay with the fact that they played off that they kind of fooled everyone is, well, to a certain degree, they kind of did. Not everybody really fully went with Meltzer's report on that, but also if you really take a look at the realm of the fan base that would be in that type of know, that reads the wrestling news, they read a Sean Ross Sapp, they read a Brian Alvarez, they read a Dave Meltzer, they go to PW Insider, WrestleVotes, things in that sense, which like WrestleVotes is part of Fightful now. That's a very small portion of the community in general. Like I know like that is a very, very small portion of the community. And not that most people within the casual fan base won't really even talk about things like that. And they may not even be into a spot where that news gets to them. So when you get to SummerSlam and they do the reveal, you get like that massive pop when he does the reveal because, well, it was even though it was out there, not really a lot of people knew about it because the amount of the amount of people that really go into the wrestling news side of everything and listen into that is actually very small. Now, obviously, it's good enough for them to for people like Fightful, PW Insider, these wrestling news sites to keep themselves afloat and actually be very profitable, and including Dave Meltzer to go along with that as well. Like they can be profitable, they can make their livings, they do like they make enough off of that to make it work. But it's still a very small portion of the fan base that does that. It's kind of like when on AEW in the early days, they would do things. This is back like when they're getting close to 1 million viewers, maybe around 800,000. But they were doing stuff from BTE, which they didn't really show anything in context from that YouTube show with the Young Bucks and everybody. And that would get like a couple 100,000 views a week. Let's not get that wrong. That's actually pretty good, but that's still less than half of their fan base that is watching the show. And they're doing this stuff as like from the YouTube show and not showing anything of context on it on AEW. So it's kind of something in that sense. Not everybody's going to know type thing. Which is why I was kind of okay. I was kind of okay with the fact that they did this because, like, even people who were within that realm didn't have the full answers. Like I said, the full answers were in the initial report, It's just that not everybody either went off of that or they didn't have their full answers on their end. So they were leaning one way or leaning the other way, but they didn't necessarily always fully know. And there were a few people that, like, they kind of, this is a work type area, and they just fully lent into it as well. So that's kind of the entire aspect behind that to go along with that. And yeah, that's just kind of my thought process on there. I wanted to get that thought process on there because that was a big focus of the final two episodes, honestly. And that was like the aspect of episode 4 as well, because I did go over everything with evolution and everything on that side to go along with that. So bringing back into episode 5, um, with that. One of the other things about that, like Becky Lynch does make mention of like having to tell the story is like, oh, who am I gonna have to lie to? Because now she becomes an accomplice in this whole thing. Because like after the injury, her phone blows up, everything in that sense. She technically has to lie to Seth's father as well to go along with it and not telling anyone. And and Seth does tell the story of Rue saying, telling one of her teacher, like he tells his daughter, is like, no, this is a fake boo-boo. I'm not actually hurt. And then her daughter subsequently tells one of her teachers, which was kind of a funny story with everything. But the other focuses of episode 5 for the SummerSlam side, the other one for night 2 was the aspect of Jelly Roll in his match with Randy Orton against Drew McIntyre and Logan Paul. I They even do this whole bit where he's getting ready for certain things out there, like he's figuring out what the table feels like, how he's going to lay down on the table for his big spot in that particular match. But also going over to Triple H, and it's like, you know, we should be playing an aspect that I should not be in this type of position and I should not be winning type thing. So he does pitch to want to lose. And Triple H is even like in a spot, like, you know, I'm kind of on a 60-40 that, yeah, the heels are going to go over in this particular match. So they do make mention of that. And you see like relief within Jelly Roll as well, because he felt like it's like he was trying to show respect to everything that was going on, because there wasn't going to be a lot of outside interference and everything in this in that sense. It wasn't going to be like the no holds bar match with Damian Priest and Bad Bunny, where there's a bunch of outside interference and you can set up to where it makes sense that Bad Bunny would win the match as well. They go through that setup in there. They go over the match with everything as well. They kind of all are talking about like their particular spots, in which they kind of make mention to is like, oh, this is when it's going to be a big pop and everything on that side. But and that was pretty much, they do kind of go through everything on night 1 and night 2 in the episode. That was pretty much the stuff from night 1. The other major stuff that they talk about is the night 2 stuff, where they focus on the Lyra and Becky match again from there, and also Cody Rhodes and John Cena. Now, for the Becky and Lyra match, they do make mention to things going wrong within that match, and just things not being completely right throughout the entire match, like with the zip tie spot, particular other spots in there just didn't go correct. Lyra even makes mention to like feeling like she was not in the zone on that particular night, to go along with that. So they kind of just go over everything within that one, and just things that were going wrong. Like she makes mention to the point of when she goes back under the ring to get the zip tie off, she has to have somebody cut it off then and there to do that. instead of being able to get back out of it, because they did a thing where like she became free from the zip tie before, and she got her hand back in there. But it was caught on camera that she was actually freed and everything to go along with that. Um, and she's like super apologetic. Like she makes mention of being super apologetic. And Becky Lynch brings this up as well. And she's like getting to like she even tells Becky's like, no, I need you to yell at me for this, because I guess Lyra's kind of a perfectionist, and Becky is like, that's to a certain degree, wanting to be that is a good quality, but it's also bad for your mental health. And she does this in episode 1 and continues it throughout episode 5. She puts over Lyra Valkyria massively as just being amazing, just in general. And honestly, you've been kind of seeing a little bit more of that. Like, she's still being featured a bunch with like Bailey and everything in that sense on there. It's not like one bad match put her into a spot where it's like, oh, I'm not going to be featured. We're not going to be doing this. No, they're doing different things with her at this point, but she's still being featured on TV for that side of everything. So like it was kind of one of those things where she was beating herself up over it, and some of the others were like, okay, yeah, bad things happen, and things don't always go the way that you think that they're going to go, and no one's perfect type thing. So they were trying to kind of lift her spirits up as well, to go along with it. So it was actually kind of an interesting aspect, because I don't remember them actually really talking too much about how things go wrong in a particular match, as well. So they do actually make mention to that in this particular case. The other thing that they do within that particular episode is that they do go through the John Cena Cody Rhodes match. They actually do make mention to how people felt that the WrestleMania match was a letdown, and that both Cody and Cena wanted to do it again and do it right. They do briefly go over the babyface turn. There was like talks about it before the whole thing of like Cena just randomly turning on the Friday Night SmackDown. There was kind of a talk of like maybe it happens during the match, and maybe it happens after the match, this or that, to kind of get the babyface thing going, where they do ultimately do that kind of awkward promo. No, not kind of. It was an awkward promo where Cena just basically was like, "Yeah, I'm just gonna be me. I'm babyface again." Blah, all that fun jazz, to go along with it. And they go through the entire match like what their setup was to be. They talk about Cody starting to get booed a little bit during the match, but Cena kind of telling him, like, no, just be you through there, because we got a story that we're gonna tell, and it's an aspect of two baby faces fighting each other, and both of them are willing to do anything to win the match and go as far as they need to go within a street fight, as well. And it was also an aspect of Cody trying to make it feel like a warrior going out on their shield. Like, if you're not wanting to give this up, I'm gonna just take it from you. And I thought it came off rather good, honestly. Within that one, they talk about that particular match. They do briefly go over the Brock return, and then they set up the aspect that there's going to be more episodes in the summer of 2026. So there's going to be a season 3 of WWE Unreal. At least it seems that would be the particular case. As I mentioned before, this is a little bit of a longer review with everything. I don't typically try to do go through reviews for that terribly long, but there was a lot to really go through in Unreal Season 2. And yeah, that is going to be my review for WWE Unreal Season 2. It was something I rather enjoyed, but then again, I kind of like particular things like this as well. And yeah, feel free, if you've gone ahead and watched it on your own or anything, feel free to leave your comments down below. And also like the video if you so wish. Subscribe to the channel as well. And with that being said, everybody, I hope you all take care, stay safe, stay healthy, and have a great rest of your day.